Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight on the Cameron Peak Fire. My name is Brandolyn Karen. I'm a Public Information Officer with the Southwest Area Incident Management Team 3. Tonight we have a couple of speakers for you guys. So we're going to go through those and then we will move into our question and answer session. So go ahead and start putting your questions down in the comments section below. We'll do what we can to answer those as they come in live. What we don't get to, we have public information officers monitoring those. And again, we'll circle back to get those. So with that, we're going to start tonight with our incident commander, Dave Gesser.
So good evening, Incident Commander Dave Gesser with the Southwest Area Team 3. A few things, as we did the update last night, very minimal growth on the fire today. We don't have the exact acres as of yet. They're calculating that now, but we did, just for an update, we did fly three large air tankers. We also had 3 helicopters. We had 3 large helicopters, 2 medium helicopters flying this today, along with a lot of resources working up here in the thumb. Corey will get into that a little bit more in detail, but a lot of effort and a lot of focus was going in to working in this area today. A lot of great coordination. I appreciate all the support with the public out there and the residents within Crystal Lake and Red Feather, and then also moving into Glacier View with the voluntary. So I appreciate those efforts out there with everyone and the cooperation. We'll go in with some of the other speakers at this time. Thank you.
Next, we're going to hear from Larimer County Sheriff Public Information Officer, David Moore.
So good evening. As Brandolyn said, my name is David Moore. I'm the Public Information Officer for the Larimer County Sheriff's Office. As you guys know, yesterday's fire activity dictated some new evacuation areas. Red Feather Lakes and Crystal Lakes were escalated to mandatory evacuations. Just about everything east of there along County Road 74E was placed under voluntary evacuations. A roadblock to note, the biggest one that we've added that we've got a lot of questions about is at County Road 74E and County Road 37. Obviously eastbound traffic for people who are evacuating, it is open. People who are traveling, trying to travel westbound past that roadblock, the only folks that we're letting through right now are the residents in the voluntary evacuation areas. We've also had several questions about credentials. Credentials for folks in mandatory evacuation areas are being offered this week at the Fort Collins City Hall. Recommend that you go to larimer.org, click on the Cameron Peak Fire info link at the top of the page to get more information about that. There is a phone number and an email they'd like you to call prior to your arrival. Plus you can see everything that you need to bring with you in order to get those credentials. If you are already issued a credential for Cameron Peak Fire, it doesn't matter when that was, that credential is good. It will be good for the duration of the fire. So there's no need to go back and get a second credential. The Cameron Peak Fire Joint Information Center is open at the Larimer County Sheriff's Office. Tonight it is open till 8 p.m. Tomorrow it'll be open from 8 to 5. That number is 970-980-2500. And when you call that number, you will get a recording with the most updated information about the fire, evacuations, roadblocks, etc. And there's also an option to push a button so that you can speak to a call taker if you have additional questions. I think that covers everything that I have for right now. Thank you.
Next, we're going to hear from our incident meteorologist, Greg Murdoch.
Good evening. We have a couple of interesting days coming up with respect to the weather. First off, tomorrow, our concern is focused around the possibility of scattered showers and storms to form in the afternoon. And that's important because of the potential for outflow winds to move across the fire. These showers and storms will be high based. Unfortunately, they'll be more dry than wet around this part of the country. 1/10 of an inch is considered to be a wetting rain. So other than maybe just a few spots, most of the fire will receive less than 1/10 of an inch of rain tomorrow. But the outflow wind, the way those things work, they can cover a large area. So that's our main concern tomorrow, is if the fire will be impacted by outflow wind from these high base showers or storms. As we move on out into Thursday and Friday, we have what we call elevated fire weather concerns, where the wind, the temperatures, the humidity, and the instability are becoming increasingly important in how the fire reacts to those elements of the weather and of the atmosphere. And so we'll be watching closely to see what transpires with the passage of a cold front late Friday, and that Thursday and Friday weather just ahead of that cold front is what we're going to be watching closely. Thank you.
Next, we'll bring up Planning Operations Trainee, Corey Carlson.
Good evening, everyone. I'll go around the horn with an update on the fire today and kind of plans for tomorrow, and I'll end up here with our problem child, the thumb. So as I've talked about for the last couple of days, things are looking good behind Glen Echo, Rustic. We have containment from that area all the way to Pingree Park Road, down the Pingree Park Road to Buckhorn. From Buckhorn down in uniform here. Been really hoping to show some containment here. We just haven't been able to get as many hands in this as we'd like with some of the other activities. So it's looking good in here. It's in a patrol status here. We just we'll probably wait through this little of wind event and before we call that contained. Further west over here above Comanche Reservoir, a couple days ago we had some smokes popping up. We were hitting it with the helicopter. Haven't had any of that for the last couple days. So this as well is all looking really good from Comanche Reservoir all the way east back to the Buckhorn Road, looking real good. CSU Mountain Campus, all that stuff's looking real good. We still have our equipment in there. We'll keep it in there for a little bit longer, but so far so good. Down here in Rocky Mountain National Park, we had this nuisance smoke that's been popping up in the Chapin Creek area. Haven't seen that pop up for a few days now. We hit it hard with the helicopters for a few days, and we kind of put it to bed for now. Everything down here in this branch 3 stuff it's good. We have good plans in place for Estes, Glen Haven, Storm Mountain, the Retreat, Cedar Park. Those guys continue to just work with park resource advisors and just continue to go over things. And they have a real good plan in there. The Long Draw Road here, all the way down to Joe Wright Reservoir, and then up this west side, looks really, really good up to here. This is the 103 Laramie River Road. Things look really good here. They're still working with some hand crews and some dozer line, kind of piecing this together. Less and less heat, less and less smoke each day, and they'll continue to double and triple check all this stuff for a while, I would say. This ground is pretty hard to access. It takes a long time to get around it, and we just want to be 100% sure that that's looking 100% before we pull folks out of there. So now we get around to the end of the dozer line here. This piece right here going east to kind of here, this is where the fire was yesterday at noon, or this is where it's been for the last week or so. This piece is basically unchecked, unworked. They've pushed a dozer line in here. They've gotten to this edge, and they've started to work a little bit in both directions, but pretty tough ground, pretty inaccessible. We got to fill on a couple hot shot crews. When those crews arrive, we're going to insert them here and have them start working this piece. This was fairly active a few days ago. It's kind of laid down for a few days, and we're hoping to get some crews in there to work that. It's just a resource that we've been lacking, and we're hoping to get something in there. Like I said, this is where the fire was sitting yesterday about noon or 1. At about 13:30, this thing got lined up with the southwest winds, the stronger winds, and kind of pushed out of here. It crossed the Kilpecker line, which is here, and went about 2.5 miles in a couple hours. So last night it sat down. About the time the sun went down, it laid down. We did activate a pretty robust night shift last night. Those guys went in and started scouting the fire's edge, looking for ways to access this. And just with the terrain features and working at night, they just gathered some intel for this morning. So what happened this morning was the fire still looked pretty good. You know, it was active on the edges. It didn't really move much today. This map is current as of tonight. The new growth today is about here and a little bit of stuff here. But other than that, what we did was we put in some dozers. We opened up this road. It's the 517 road. Some of you guys were asking me to mention road numbers. So we came in off the Manhattan road, this 517 road, and we started putting some dozer line in right on the direct edge, kind of opening this up to get access. And what that's going to allow us to do is tonight we have access in here. Now we can start pushing back dozer line this way on the fire's edge, you know, hopefully right on the fire's edge, and try to make as much ground tonight as we can. We're going to have 3 dozers working, a couple skidders, and a feller buncher. And that's heavy equipment. They take down trees, you know, just able to put some line in there. We also plan on, what they did today was they came in off the 14 road and they worked this piece up to here. This has been previously worked, but they were able to come in here. They were able to pick up the fire's edge and kind of work it with dozers and crews all day long. So the plan for tonight, this ground here is a lot more challenging. You can see this 7-mile drainage and all the little sub drainages that shoot off there. We really want to keep it out of here, because once it gets in there, it gets inaccessible again. It starts getting affected by the wind and slope and alignment, and it's going to want to kind of go in a couple different directions. So we're going to try to make some hay tonight and get on this fire's edge the best we can. And we're hoping by tomorrow at some point we can have line basically even with the head of this thing. This thing's going to continue to move east tomorrow. We don't anticipate huge movement, something similar to today. But if we can get close to even with the head of this thing, we're going to be sitting in a lot better position. As you can see, we got pretty good dozer line coming here, ties into the Manhattan Road all the way down to the fire's edge where we have containment. So this is kind of our secondary line of defense tomorrow. We're going to try to get even with this, try to see if we can get around the head. It is still challenging right here at the head. You know, it doesn't look like it on the map, obviously, but it's rocky, it's steep. Some of the country, I don't think the dozer would be able to make it across. But the more we can open up some of these roads and get access here, and the more this fire just kind of slowly moves to the east, the more accessible this ground is. There's also some old fuel treatments in here. That's going to lessen the fire spread to the east. And we're hoping to try to pick this thing up somewhere between here and between this dozer line. So that would be our primary focus tomorrow. This Dead Man Road and Manhattan Road, we had a ton of engines in there. They had their hose out. We had pumps going. We were checking to make sure the pumps all started. We were organizing task force of engines with supervision, getting reoriented with some of the new engines of the subdivisions, putting maps together. So a lot of good work is taking place in here while these folks are on mandatory evacuation. We've been in there working really hard. Should this fire want to make another run out this direction. Glacier View, like the sheriff's office said, voluntary, these ones in mandatory, and then a lot of good work going on in here. And I think that's about it. So with that, thank you.
All right, so that concludes the portion of our speakers giving us an update and a little bit of information. We'll now move into the question and answer portion. So like I said earlier, if you're just joining us, go ahead and drop your comment or question into the chat below, and we'll get to as many of those as we can. So tonight for questions, we have available the Incident Commander, Planning Operations Trainee. We also have the Public Information Officer from the Larimer County Sheriff's Office. We have Katie Donahue from the U.S. Forest Service. And we also have Darla Seidels from the National Park Service. So go ahead and drop those questions and we'll get started. All right, so our first question for Incident Commander Dave Gesser is going to be, how much longer will the Southwest team be in charge of the fire before it is handed off?
So that's a good question. The Southwest Area Team 3, we did extend out to 21 days. So our team is currently still in place until September 28th.
Next question. Do you have enough manpower and resources?
So yeah, at this time, we did do what's known as the surge resources, working with the state. We brought in a strike team of engines, which is 5 engines in a strike team. So we brought in 15 engines from the state. And then we also, as Corey mentioned, we were able to get fills on 3 hotshot crews that'll be coming in between tomorrow and the next day to help put in this line that's needed here. And then we were able, as we said, to get some air tankers. And then with all the other equipment we have out there, we have quite a bit of manpower out there. So again, as we stated once before, with those air tankers, we were really getting into some ground that was more conducive to be able to utilize those tankers, especially as we're getting into here. And that's what they were doing quite a bit between yesterday and today, was really just trying to flank the fire and be able to buy our folks on the ground that time in there.
All right, well, we have you. For the upcoming wind event, what direction will the winds be blowing?
So the winds will be coming out of the southwest. So they'll be blowing, coming over towards the east.
All right, thank you. Next, we'll bring up Planning Operations Trainee, Corey Carlson. All right, Corey, first question. How far is the fire from Red Feather Lake?
So each one of these squares is a mile. So 1, 2, 3, between 3 and 4 miles, I would say, just looking at it. There's some stuff here that's a little bit closer, but about 4 miles.
And just a real quick mention for the folks watching online, we're unable to zoom into our map right now due to our bandwidth in our location. So a public information officer has just dropped a link into our map. So as Corey talks about these different locations, as well as our other speakers tonight, you can open up that map, zoom in, zoom out, and see a lot more detail. With that, we'll move to our next question with Corey. When you cut a line, where do you take or put the cut brush, branches, and trees?
Yeah, so when we cut so a lot of the stuff going on around here, all that stuff was cut by hand, a lot of it. We use chippers, and yeah, we just feed the chippers with that. Some of the heavy equipment, we'll take those logs, we'll deck them, and then they'll get processed. If the wood could be sold, they'll do that. But for the most part on this fire, a lot of the work that's been done has been done by hand, and the material's been chipped.
All right, next question is, how many hand crews do you have building line on the night shift?
So tonight we probably won't have any hand crews out there. It's going to be all heavy equipment. It's some of this stuff is pretty steep, pretty rocky. If we were to have an accident out there or an injury, it would be hard to get folks out in the dark. So for the night shift tonight, dealing with this, it will be primarily heavy equipment. We will have folks in and along the Highway 14 corridor. We will have folks in the subdivision doing some work, but all that stuff would be easily accessible from their engine or their vehicle, you know, a more accessible ground.
So can you provide us an update on Highway 14 west of Glen Echo? Nothing has been said on that portion.
Yep, so Highway 14 west of Glen Echo, this piece, it looks really good. We've had engines in here for a long time, during the snow, the entire time. So there's a few places where the fire's edge hasn't quite made it down to Highway 14 in about 3 or 4 spots. And that fire continues to back down the slope, and we have engines and crews sitting there when it does, that they can take care of it. Some of the slopes behind the houses are, it's just too steep to get back in there. They start getting rolling material coming down the hill, stuff like that. So it's best to just monitor that stuff, let it back to us, let it come to us on our terms, and then when it gets to the corridor, we'll mop it up and take care of it. So this will continue to be worked for a long time to come. Just because of the values at risk in here, we want to make sure everything looks really good in there.
Is the fire getting close to Bel Air Lake Campground?
Yep, so here's the campground, Bel Air Lake Campground. It is about 1.25 miles. So it's close. Again, this 517 road right here, they're working this tonight. They'll be working it tomorrow. They worked it today. You know, the intent would be to let this fire come to us on this road, or us potentially being able to come off the 517 road with dozers and get around the head of this. Like I said, some of this ground right out ahead is not all that favorable for heavy equipment, but it's close to Bel Air Lake. We know that. We have folks in there. We're not really concerned with, you know, fire making a huge run at Bel Air Lake, but we'll be ready for it if it does.
All right, next question. How wide is the Manhattan Road after dozing?
So the Manhattan Road is the Manhattan Road. We've done some prep work off the road. We've reduced some ladder fuels, stuff that, you know, could give us problems if we had to burn the Manhattan Road. And then these dozer lines that you see in here, what we're trying to do is keep this line as straight as possible. So some of the dozer line will take out some of the dog legs in the Manhattan Road, just so we have a nice straight line. I know it doesn't look exactly straight on the map, but really just trying to keep as straight a line as possible. And the dozer line is anywhere from 1 to 3 blade lengths, depending on the dozer type. So the dozer line's probably about as wide as the Manhattan Road is.
Next question. Can you give a status update on Monument Gulch?
Yep, Monument Gulch. This is all contained here. You know, this Monument Gulch is in here. Things are looking good. We continue to have engines in here patrolling, looking for hot spots. There hasn't been a whole lot, but we'll continue to maintain a presence in here along the Pingree Park Road, along the Buckhorn Road, and along this fire's edge for weeks.
How far east of South Bald Mountain is the fire?
So that's probably hard to see. Here's South Bald Mountain, right there. And the fire is about 1.5 miles east of South Bald Mountain.
All right, thank you, Corey. Next, we'll bring up our Incident Commander, Dave Gesser, again. The question is, are you getting all the resources you have requested?
You know, I would say to a degree, yes. Some of our engines are not getting filled, but we are getting some of those filled, and that's why that surge of resources we got in from the state really helped us out.
All right, next question is going to be, can you put down fire retardant days ahead of the fire to suppress it?
So no, basically with that retardant, as we explained a few nights ago, that's put in there. It's a chemical mixed in with water, and what that does then is it helps to retain that moisture within the fuels on the ground. So it's wet when it goes in, and as it dries, it doesn't then still protect those fuels.
All right, and another question, again, in regards to resources. So if folks start leaving on the 28th, how many will be left to work, and are more coming in to replace those folks leaving?
So yeah, with the resources, we're constantly watching our resources. So as we watch those resources and their last work days are coming up, we're putting orders in for those resources. We coordinate with what we call the MAC group to kind of stress the level of what we need for those resources. So, with us being a national PL5, there is competition for resources, as we've said, but, we are getting the resources we need. And with our team timing out and getting ready to leave, we have placed an order for another team coming in. So basically my team's made up of 58 personnel, and most teams are that way as well. Your type 2s and your type 1s we've discussed before.
All right, thank you. We'll bring up the Larimer County Sheriff Public Information Officer, David Moore. So your first question is, why can't we just show our car registration as proof we live up here?
So you can. A Larimer County issued credential is not required. The whole purpose of the credential is for large groups of people returning to an evacuation area after that has been lifted. It speeds up the process and makes it a lot easier, so the cars don't necessarily have to stop at the roadblock and talk to the person there and compare paperwork and so forth. You have the credential, you show it, they look at it, they let you through. However, if you do have proof that you own or live in property in one of the evacuation areas, you can use that to access your property when it's safe to do so.
Next question is, any idea on opening Crown Point Road?
So Crown Point Road is currently in a mandatory evacuation area, which is primarily why it's closed. Depending on fire activity, depending on what's going on in the canyon and so forth, there's also, to my understanding, there's still no power up there, which poses a risk to folks going up there who may not be able to call for help or anything else like that. But we are constantly evaluating all of the evacuation areas, and we're trying our best to accommodate folks and get them back into their homes as soon as we can.
So we've had a couple questions in regards to the Glacier View area, Glacier View Meadows. People are wondering if they need to look for a mandatory evacuation anytime soon. Any idea when the Glacier View evac will be lifted? So can you just touch on that area?
Sure. So the Glacier View area obviously is under the voluntary evacuations right now because of the fire activity yesterday. As long as the fire is active in that area, you will stay under one level or another of evacuation. And our trigger point for Glacier View going to mandatory evacuation is if the fire reaches the Manhattan Road.
Next question, kind of along the same lines, but for a different area. How long do you anticipate it will be before lifting the mandatory evacuations for Red Feather Lakes and more specifically the Pingree Hill, Shambhala area?
Okay, so again, that's all dictated by fire activity. And with yesterday's fire growth, that is going to stay under mandatory until the fire team and the sheriff's office work together and feel that the fire is not going to continue to grow and push toward those areas.
So I know you touched on credentials a little bit already. For the folks that are just joining us, we still have questions about getting up to certain areas like Rustic and other areas with their credentials. So what does that look like, and is that possible?
So if you live or own property down here on this southern half of the fire, pretty much away from this, we are doing our absolute best to accommodate you and get you into your property, but we want to do it safely. The best thing to do is to call the Joint Information Center first thing in the morning at 970-980-2500. You can also call 2501 and speak to a public information officer. Whether or not you can access your property in a mandatory evacuation area is 100% dependent on what's going on that day at that time. There's no way we can tell you, on Thursday it's going to be okay if you want to go up to your property. When you call us, we will call and talk to the command post based on what's going on right then and there. They will make a decision. It also is dependent on your travel time to get to that area. And then we typically have a deputy escort you to your property to make sure that you get there safely.
Next question is, when can we return to Highway 14, specifically 1 mile above Arrowhead Visitor Center to winterize? And we have had that question from a lot of folks. When can they get back in to winterize, check on their property?
Right, so that's the exact same answer to the last question. Depending on what's going on at the time, call ahead, 970-980-2500 or 2501, and we will make that phone call to the command post and find out if they feel that it's safe for you to go at that time. You'll get stopped at the roadblock. They'll have your name already, and they will have a deputy escort you in. Cannot make any promises if that's going to happen from one day to the next. It just depends on what's going on with not only fire activity, but firefighter activity in the area. It may not be safe for vehicles to be passing along Highway 14 at that time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll bring back up Planning Operations Trainee, Corey Carlson. Okay, this is kind of a little bit of a longer question. With the size of this fire, the terrain, and all the structures at risk, why are we not hammering this thing with airdrops after airdrops, utilizing those aircrafts, and utilizing the lakes and other water sources in the area?
Yeah, so we have been. We've been hammering the thumb area for a while. You know, you could drop 1 million gallons of water on here, but until you get boots on the ground to actually reinforce that, you know, you're never gonna put the fire out. So, you know, what that does is that helps us, that cools down the edge so that we can get firefighters in there safely to kind of work the edge. But it's just like a campfire. If you just dump water on it, you know, there's still heat in there. You have to stir it up. You have to work it until it's cool. So that's the same thing here. You know, it just buys us some time to get folks in to work the ground. As far as air tankers, we ran heavy air tankers on this, on the south end, the north end, all day long today. And again, that retardant, you know, it slows the fire. It buys us time. But you know, if we don't follow up with a dozer or some crews and actually put fire line in here, you know, eventually it just will burn right through that. So we're hammering it with aviation, and we're back following it up with ground resources to enforce it.
Can you please address the potential danger to Estes Park and Glen Haven residents?
I would say it's pretty slim. Of course, we're not, you know, this fire, although there's not much activity really at all anymore down here. You know, there's very little activity down here. We're probably going to show this contained here in the next couple days. A lot of this country right here, it didn't burn for a reason. This is high elevation tundra, you know, 14,000 feet, you know, rock stuff that's not going to burn. So the threat to Estes Park and Glen Haven is very, very minimal. I'm not going to say that it couldn't happen, but it's highly unlikely at this point that there would be any impacts to Estes Park, Glen Haven, or any of these communities over here.
Can you tell us more about what type of air support you have?
Yeah, so we got, we have type 3 helicopters, type 2 helicopters, type 1 helicopters. Type 1 helicopters are the biggest. They drop water. I saw a question in the chat box about how many gallons of water the type 1s have, about 1,000 gallons. The type 2s hold, you know, about 250 gallons, and the type 3s hold about 100, 125 gallons. So we have all types of those helicopters. I think we have, like, you know, anywhere between 7 and 9, I think, helicopters. And then we've had 3 single engine air tankers that drop about 500 gallons of retardant. And we had at least 2 to 4 large air tankers. I don't want you to quote me on that, but you know, those hold in the thousands of gallons of retardant, and we have those as well. We also have an air attack platform, and the air attack is a fixed wing King Air type plane. It circles the perimeter of the fire 15,000 feet or something, and it's basically an air traffic controller in the sky. They determine, entries for helicopters. They make sure there's separation between air tankers and helicopters so that all these folks can work in here at the same time together. And that air attack, he coordinates the traffic, makes sure people are coming in at the right altitude, and he sets priorities and stuff like that. So it's pretty interesting how this all works. It's a pretty complex air show out there. A lot of it you don't even see or know if it's happening. So we're hitting this hard with aviation. We're doing a lot of coordination, and that's about it for the aviation.
Next question, is the fire coming down Kinnickinnick to the fish hatchery?
Yep, so the fish hatchery is right about there. Like I said, we do still have fire backing down in and around the fish hatchery, down towards Highway 14. We have firefighters right there as it gets there to deal with it. We're not worried about any of this stuff in this triangle here. Kinnickinnick's, it's good. There's been a lot of people in there, a lot of folks working in it. Down to Spencer's is looking good. This whole little triangle here, which you're kind of referring to, looks good. I know we don't have black on the map like here, but we're getting real close.
Next question is, what exactly are you doing in the Red Feather subdivision?
All kinds of stuff. We have pumps, we have hose, we have water sources, we have firefighters, we have heavy equipment. We have maps of every home in there. We're doing work in and around the subdivision. We're doing work inside the subdivision. You name it, we have it in there, and it's all working, and it's all, with the focus of this fire coming this way, that we can minimize impacts to the values.
All right, thank you, Corey. Incident Commander Dave Gesser. Is there an update on the cause of the fire?
So at this time, there's not. It's still under investigation.
All right, next question. What is the next trigger point on the thumb for mandatory evacuations?
So I believe we answered this earlier, but I'll do it again with Larimer County. But our next trigger point is the Manhattan Road. Just right off the Manhattan Road would be our next trigger point for Glacier View.
All right, thank you. Next, we have a question for Forest Service, Katie Donahue. So we actually have a couple people asking this question along the same lines. I'm going to kind of combine them. Folks are wondering, can they camp and hunt east of containment?
So if you're talking east of containment, like where it's on the Pingree Park Road, we do have a quarter-mile opening on the Pooter Canyon because we really wanted to give folks the opportunity to get down to the river. I know there's a lot of folks fishing parked on the pull-offs down there, but the area in just east of the fire is still closed. The reason that we have that, we don't want people getting too far back close to the fire area. We will be looking at those closures over time. Some of it's about access and how folks get in there and whether or not they can do that safely. Obviously with the roads being closed, accessing it from the fire area is pretty complicated. So at this point, we're not looking at changing those closures. There are still areas that you can hunt. There's probably a lot of folks piled up on top of each other up in the northwest corner of the district, kind of in the Roach area. And I know that there's some closures that have been done on the Medicine Bow route in Wyoming as well. So folks who hunt here locally in both states have been inconvenienced. So we are always looking at those, but we're keeping them in place as long as we can not ensure people's safety.
All right, thank you. All right, we're going to bring operations back up. Tori? This question for you is, at what point do you decide to backburn and how do you control that fire, particularly if there's wind?
What was the question again?
At what point do you decide to backburn and how do you control that fire, particularly if there's wind?
Yeah, so before we backburn, a lot of things have to come into play. Weather's one of them. Obviously we don't want to, if we're getting a southwest wind, we don't want to lay fire out there and just have it blow right over our line. Typically you want to burn against the wind. That's not always, you can't predict the weather. There's times where we have to burn. So burning is not something that we really want to do on this incident. And there's the main reason why is the bug kill in this fuel type. There is a ton of standing dead, maybe 50 to 70% of some of the fuels in here is dead. So if we initiate fire, the one area where we could possibly do it is along the Dead Man and Manhattan Road. But if we do that, in that dead component, it can be a little messy. It can cause spot fires. And I don't know that we want to initiate too much fire. If we were going to do it, it would be at night. Typically the winds are calmer. They come down slope instead of upslope. And then, the humidities are higher. We can dictate fire behavior a little bit better at night. At least we can do it a little more on our terms. We can wait for the humidity to get to a certain percentage, and we can wait for temperatures to go down and just more favorable conditions. So if there was going to be backburning done on this fire, it would be along the Manhattan Road, primarily at night, and when we have a little bit more favorable wind conditions and weather conditions.
All right, thank you, Corey. Incident Commander Dave Gesser. So not specific to this fire, but folks are wondering, what will you do during the off season, such as the winter? So do you do training and prepare fire lines in the event of new fires?
That's a good question. So, a lot of us take that time to spend with our families, and have that time, but we also do a lot of training. So most of our trainings that we attend are during that winter time. So we attend those trainings, but most forests, a lot of forests, I should say, do have their prescribed burning, their thinning projects that go on during those times of years as well, to be able to prep and get things ready for those burning, to take opportunities of the windows for those burning times.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
So next, we do have one question for Rocky Mountain National Park. Darla Idols is on with us. Bear with us for just a moment as we bring her up. So Darla, the question for you is going to be, how is Rocky Mountain National Park at the Estes entrance?
How is Rocky Mountain National Park at the Estes entrance? I'm not sure I understand the question.
So that's what they put. I wanted to read that exactly. So could you maybe just give us an overview of what it's looking like on the National Park Service side in regards to the Cameron Peak fire?
Sure. So we have two primary entrances on the east side of the park, the Fall River entrance and the, the Beaver Meadows entrance. And the fire is a long way from both of those. Excuse me. As you can see, the fire is very exclusive to the north part of the park. So it's got a long way to go to get down the Fall River drainage toward the Fall River entrance. That could happen, as was mentioned earlier, with stronger winds. But right now, there's very few smokes, and the ones that do pop up, they're putting them out very quickly with a helicopter. So the only, immediate threat to the park is the area where the smokes are right now. But the entrances, both on the east side and the west side, are not at all impacted. Does that answer the question?
I think that'll do. Thank you, Darla.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll go ahead and bring Corey Carlson back up for operations. question, Corey, is are you planning on more super tanker drops tomorrow?
There's a couple different kinds of air tankers. There's single engine air tankers, the seats, they're like the crop dusters, 500 gallons. Then there's the large air tankers. They're the ones you see most common. They do a couple thousand gallons. And then there's VLATs. They're the very large air tankers, DC-10s. They drop, 10,000 gallons or something of retardant. So we have the single engine air tankers and the large air tankers. And we'll continue, if they're available to help us reinforce the north and south part of this so that we can reinforce it on the ground. So that is the plan. They're not guaranteed. They're available as needed depending on the incidents going on across the country.
You were working County Highway 14 north side in Rustic. Do you have concerns for these homes?
Yep. So here's Rustic right here. Here's our containment line here. So we don't anticipate any fire moving towards Rustic this way. There's this that's coming here. A lot of work's been done in and around Glen Echo and Rustic. And I would say at this time, we don't have too many concerns with Rustic. No.
Next question is about fire behavior. Is the fire throwing spots?
Yep, the fire is throwing spots, and that's pretty much what caused this yesterday is, we were trying to work the northeast corner of this thumb. It continued to throw spots. Every time it threw a spot, we had to put our aviation kind of on that. And that's what happens in this bug kill, this beetle kill stuff. It just continues to throw spots out ahead of this. Sometimes it can throw spots 100 yards, 200 yards, a quarter mile. On big plume dominated fire days, it can throw spots a mile or further. So that's really been kind of challenging for us on this fire is the spotting out ahead of it.
Next question, can you please talk more about the risk to Crystal Lakes with the upcoming wind events? The forecasted winds are southwest, then they're going to turn west, and then they're actually going to turn a little northwest. So for Crystal Lakes, it's a ways to go here. Certainly, it's several miles, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 miles just to the edge. Yes, it can, with southwest winds, and if it gets aligned in some of these drainages, it could shoot up this way, but long way to go. Our concern right now is this Manhattan Road and the Dead Man Road. Those are kind of our options, and then going really direct right on the fire's edge. Next question is, have you placed any sprinklers or other fire mitigation methods on any properties in Crystal Lake?
Yep, it's all over the place. I can't tell you exactly. I haven't been out there lately, but that's a primary structure, a defense thing that we use is putting sprinklers up, and there's a lot of it all over up here.
So you kind of answered this, but so it sounds like it's not possible. Sorry about that, guys. So then the question is it possible for the people to find out if that mitigation is taking place around their home?
Probably not. I would say, there's a lot of work going on in these subdivisions. There's also a lot of homes. Not every home's going to have a sprinkler system around it. They triage each individual structure, and that triage, what comes out of that determines what kind of structure of mitigation goes into place. Some structures may not have anything. They may have defensible space around it. It may have, a metal roof and a stucco, and it may be, kind of a standalone defensible. There's other structures that, have to have more work done around them and maybe a sprinkler around it. So it's a variation in all these communities on what's going on. The big thing we're trying to do is keep it out of the subdivision altogether, so we don't have to use any of that stuff. And that's some of the stuff we're doing with the dozer lines around the, entire community.
All right, thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
For incident commander, could you explain what triggers a mandatory evacuation and how you guys address that working with our partner agencies?
Yeah, so basically what we have is that management action point. And basically that's just a kind of a line on the map that we look at to allow that time to be able to do those evacuations. At any time, we can pull the trigger earlier based on fire behavior. So a lot of that, we strategically try to put those in place around a fire so that as it reaches that point, we can then work with our cooperators to be able to get folks out of there in a timely manner and safe manner. So as I said, that a lot of what dictates that is fire behavior. How fast is the fire moving? What are the winds doing? What's the prediction?
All right, thank you. Next question is for the Forest Service. Hugh Donahue. After the fire has been contained and is out, does the National Forest Service do restoration at some point?
Sure. So just this week, just this morning, we had the kickoff for our burned area emergency response team, which is also known as BEAR. You guys will be hearing a lot about that over the coming weeks. So that's a group of specialists in all kinds of natural resources and also archaeology that go out and look at what the emergency impacts have been of the fire. And they'll look at what our opportunities are to stabilize. I mean, you guys know we have a lot of reservoirs up in the area, so how do we protect those from sedimentation and some of the soil issues of fires? They'll be looking also at what our prospects are for regeneration. They won't get into that sort of longer term stuff right away with the BEAR efforts, but we'll get some reports that should give us an idea of what to expect over the coming years. And there certainly will be evaluations made and treatments planned. As a lot of you have been aware throughout this fire, a huge portion of it is in wilderness. So want folks to be prepared that there will be some areas of the fire that we will be working and doing active restoration work, and there will some others that will be letting Mother Nature do her own restoration work at a slower pace. So yeah, there's lots of stuff going on with that.
All right, thank you. Next question will be answered by Incident Commander about the different lines being put in the surrounding area of the fire.
Yeah, so, Corey's talked quite a bit about the different lines. We'll have what we're calling dozer line, we'll have hand line. We got what we call hot spot and cold trailing, which is basically going along the fire's edge with the palm of the hands. Folks who are actually checking to see if the ground's hot or not. And then we have, as we talked several times about, indirect line and direct line. And direct line is right up against the black edge. We carry the black, we just get right along the black edge and go direct. That indirect line is where we fall back, kind of like the Manhattan Road is. And as Corey talked, and I saw a question on there earlier about the opportunities of putting line in before Manhattan Road. And they are looking at that. The emphasis right now is really on the flanks of the fire to be able to bring it and keep it so it doesn't flank out any farther on us. And we have what would be, a 5-mile head on the front of this. So they're pinching it down and then looking at the opportunities as that fuel transitions with the fuels treatment projects and the prescribed burning that the forest has done in this area. That gives us a better opportunity to be able to go in and look at some other lines in here before we actually hit the Manhattan. It's just a matter of the time and space and being able to get in there and do that. And with that, I just want to let folks know, we're working closely with all the cooperators, really getting in and really emphasizing, trying to really pick up what we're calling the thumb. A lot of work's going on in there with the crews and things. And I did see one other question in there that I'll hit on. On this fire itself, no, we have not had any serious accidents or injuries on this fire. So I wanted to address that. We've been doing really well with our firefighters, really looking for their safety. And you've heard in the past about we've had to pull people back out, and that's due to that fire activity. So we'll set triggers in there, and if that fire activity really picks up, we pull folks out of the area, get them into safe areas, and then re-engage when we can. But I appreciate all the support from the public, all the thank yous that have been coming in. It's great for the firefighters to be able to see that posted in and around the communities. So thank you for all your support as well.
All right, and with that, our time with you guys has come to an end for tonight. However, please continue to drop questions in. If you're still watching this after the fact, reach out to us with a private Facebook message, give one of our public information officers a call, and we'll do the best we can to get those answers to you, or at least get you pointed in the right direction. A lot of information is available here on this Facebook page through videos and posts. Don't forget to visit INSEEWeb. We'll drop that link as well so you guys can access that. We have a story map with some really great information. And then, as always, thank you guys for your support and have a good evening.